Hello, I will present a short version of my paper and the extended one which I submitted. Okay. In the extended one which I submitted a couple of days ago to the organizers, I made several references to Miron Constantinescu, like the case study, which was like a second approach on my paper. But due to the time limit, in this short version, I will only discuss the methodological framework of my research. The subject of the paper is constructed around analysis of the methods and the sources by which we are able to reconstruct the biography of an underground communist militant. Thus, I will examine each type of source or discourse, trying to detect a method by which we are able to read these sources in the correct manner. In these circumstances, my mission is to provide justifications for each type of source separately to prove the veracity and or the doubts on the different sequences of the communist underground militant past. In my perspective, there are three types of sources or discourses which can be taken into account: the myth biography, the autobiography, and let's say the DGSP files, which is like the Security Police Department or Siguranță in Romanian. Myth biography concept refers to the type of discourse expressed by the communist propaganda, which usually was coining the underground militant's biography according to a specific pattern. This type of biography was coded through Greek, which will be referred as the communist identity referential, which entails an amount of aspects that were considered essential in the construction of an ideal past for a communist militant. Autobiography, on the other hand, represents the individual's retrospection into the past. In this category of sources or discourses, one may include the institutional and the literary type of autobiography. The institutional autobiography can be defined as a text written by a party member in the process of admission within the structure, the text being subject to a constant update. Literary autobiography suggests another type of analysis used in the construction of an individual past. Short text with autobiographical character, memoirs, and interviews. Finally, the last type of discourse is represented by the Siguranță files, which construct the evolution of the underground communist activists. These files allow us to recover a completely different perspective on the subject. Thus, the clandestine movement of communism was described through an obscure history with trivial characters, false identities, conspiracy houses, and code names. My mission is to find the level of invention entailed in these sources and discourses, and the approximation that accompany each biographical sequence. I will try to surprise the key element that transforms the raw document into a historical source. Moreover, I will try to provide substantiations regarding the plausibility of different parts of the speech and doubts about the others. The first type of source I should refer is the myth biography. As I said before, this concept refers to the communist propaganda speech, which has a primary purpose to transform the communist underground militant past into a history that one could consider as being fitted to the communist demand. This was the history of the so-called experienced leaders, of those who have sacrificed their youth in the name of the people, or the communist intransigent militants who were struggling for the creation of an egalitarian and fair society for the idea of communism. From this perspective, the propagandistic biography became a speech mixed with symbols and specific themes which transformed the militant's past into a standardized history. The stories that accompanied the myth biography type appear as stereotyped sequences best defined as narrative themes. These sequences had the role of duplicating and enlarging the essential themes that stood at the basis of the social differentiation principle generically called the communist identity referential. In a Soviet communist political system, the biography appeared as a cardinal point of reference. The communist society, within the communist society, the economic capital ceased to be regarded as a main source of social ranking while the academic capital was highly marginalized. In these conditions, it appeared the necessity in creating a new principle of social distinction and ranking. This new principle laid on the political capital the fundamental element of social identity. The result stood in the birth of a new communist identity referential with powerful accent on the revolutionary class, the proletariat, and what it was considered to be its avant-garde, the party. In the circumstances, the social and ideological biography of each person became the referential through which the society was ranked. Belonging to a proletarian genealogical line became a collective obsession. And this genealogical dimension of the social identity was doubled by the political trajectory of each individual. These two itineraries determining the intensity and the structures of every individual's political capital. The specific features of Romanian communism, and especially clandestinity, have enlarged the area of essential elements which coagulate the identity referential. Thus, it were valued not only the proletarian social origin and the adhesion to the communist movement, but also the revolutionary precocity, the clandestine activism and commitment, and the imprisonment experience as a form of political repression. And I will say a little word on each of these criterions. The social origin represented an essential element of each one's identity in the communist system. The communist propaganda was using the collocation held as social origin, a term to describe either the working class proletarian or a rural ruler, and was mainly a poor peasantry lineage. Another important feature contained by the communist activist biography was the form of enrollment in the structures coordinated by the party. Often it was essential to emphasize the early adherence to the communist cause and the idea of a total and unconditional commitment of the militant. Revolutionary precocity is considered also an important constituent of the identity referential. The idea that stands at the basis of this concept was that of an unequal society which made clear distinction between the rich and the poor, the oppressors and the oppressed. The true communist militant would have observed this injustice of society during his youth, sometimes even childhood, developing a tendency to struggle against the social unfairness. The revolutionary precocity concept is also highlighting the idea of the chosen one, a theme of the predestined fate, and that of the existence of historical determinism in the particular case of communist militants. The propagandistic biography of each of the one had also the purpose to outline the image of a hero activist, of a fearless and relentless activist, capable of the supreme sacrifice, that of the militants who sacrifice his youth for the people. The activism in an illegal structure had some particular characteristics. Careerism was out of the question, the work duties often became obscure, sometimes at the limit of the law, and sometimes even broke the law. Moreover, entering into the illegal communist movement, you automatically face the possibility to meet law's rigor. Communist propaganda knew how to outline these details, valuing these elements from each militant past, from the militant's past. With an over 2 decades outlaw history, the Romanian communism also valued the prison experience as an important element in every militant's biography. Imprisonment was undoubtedly the most visible and severe form of political repression. Thus, evoking the period of imprisonment became a fertile and recurrent theme for the communist propaganda discourse. The details that were outlined regarding this experience of militants' past were those related to the brutal and arbitrary nature of the arrest and detention, and those related to the inhuman, they said, condition of detention. Thus, the texts that we may include in the myth biography category revolve around these main narrative themes. Skimming through this text, one may conclude that only the details can individualize them. The second type of sources, or discourse, that we'll take into consideration is autobiography. As I said before, in this category of sources, one may include the institutional and the literary autobiography. The institutional autobiography of each party member was constituted of the retrospection on specific themes and subjects according to a model. This type of autobiography became a personal history written in relation with the party and the way to point out the fundamental difference between a self, seen as a part of a whole, us, and the others. The institutional autobiography was also about the intimate reassessment and the artful retouching of each one's past. Within this text, the cleavage between public and private disappeared, and the most intimate personal secrets became participles, a symbolic gesture which had the purpose to highlight, once again, the difference between us and the others, and between the inners and the outsiders. Because of the constraints by which it was characterized, the institutional autobiography became a text encoded by a grid rather biographical than autobiographical, the questionnaire.